We can say with a degree of confidence that there was deadly asbestos all throughout the east wing of the White House that Donald Trump demolished. We can also say with a degree of confidence that there is no known abatement plan for that asbestos, which is required on any government project or any project in general that used the type of asbestos that was in the East Wing during this period of time, where people who inhale this asbestos in demolition projects are likely to contract mesothelioma or make them much more susceptible to other types of cancers as well. The company that did the demolition, ASECO, they've not been licensed to conduct asbestos abatement since 2022, so they're not even allowed to do the abatement. And multiple times the White House has been asked, just show us the asbestos abatement plan that existed. It should be a fairly easy document, and where the processes are supposed to play out with appropriate oversight, especially when it comes to government buildings. But just in general, this should be a document that is very easily produced. But in response to public records requests, letters from multiple senators, the White House has provided nothing, and people who were in and around that area could very likely now be susceptible to deadly cancers, and they could be killed as a result of their involvement in this project. I think it's important to also know that Donald Trump inherently doesn't believe that asbestos is a bad thing. In fact, Donald Trump believes that people who criticize asbestos have been paid off or bullied by the mob. That's one of Donald Trump's conspiracy theories. In 1997, Trump published a book titled The Art of the Comeback. And in that book, Trump wrote the following: I believe that the movement against asbestos was led by the mob because it was often mob-related companies that would do asbestos removal. Just pause there for a second. Anything that Donald Trump says, though, is always projection and confession. So in terms of people speculating about his mob ties, well, I'll just leave that to you to decipher. Trump goes on to say, great pressure was put on politicians, and as usual, the politicians relented. Millions of truckloads of this incredible fireproofing material were taken to special dump sites, and asbestos was replaced by materials that were supposedly safe but couldn't hold a candle to asbestos in limiting the ravages of fire. Talk to mesothelioma widows. Talk to family members who lost loved ones to mesothelioma and tell them that you believe that the disease, that the cancer that killed their loved ones was actually just a conspiracy made up by the mob. I think people forget that Donald Trump had said that before, and you shouldn't, because this guy has always been a deranged, vile creature. Also, Donald Trump in 2012 tweeted that the World Trade Center, quote, would never have burned down after the September 11 attacks if asbestos hadn't been removed from the building. And Trump said, if we didn't remove the incredibly powerful fire retardant asbestos and replace it with the junk, Trump says you wouldn't have seen the World Trade Centers burned down. I mean, what a horrific thing for him to say, but he's been saying things like this his entire life. He's a deranged human being. Also, recently, June 2025, Trump's EPA filed in a federal court that it will be reconsidering the ban on cancer-causing asbestos. Trump has supported the use of asbestos and blamed the mob for its bad reputation. Here was the filing, just so you remember it. We covered it back in June, but I want to report on it now in the context of the deadly asbestos that will likely kill people who were by the White House as a result of this demolition without the appropriate abatement. And it talks about how EPA Director Lee Zeldin will be moving this court for an order to continue to do a hearing in abeyance for 6 months, because it says the petition challenges the final rule entitled Asbestos Part 1, a type of asbestos called white asbestos, deadly asbestos. And the EPA basically says it's going to reconsider the bans by the Biden administration and previous administrations. There's this article from Ars Technica, which talks also about a Washington Post article recently. Trump's swift demolition of the East Wing may have launched asbestos plumes. There is no confirmation that the Trump administration followed the abatement process. It goes on to talk about how the East Wing was constructed in 1902, it was renovated in 1942, and asbestos was used extensively in government buildings during this period, according to the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization, ADAO, a nonprofit focused on preventing asbestos exposure. Anyone who inadvertently breathes in asbestos fibers launched into the air by construction work could be at a heightened risk of lung disease and cancer. Quote, every building of this age must undergo a full asbestos inspection and abatement before any demolition begins, Linda Reinstein, president and co-founder of the ADAO, says. In a letter sent to the White House, Reinstein explained, federal law requires comprehensive asbestos inspection, notification, and abatement before any demolition. As of this date, no publicly available information demonstrates these statutory obligations have been fulfilled. And the Washington Post also confirms that they don't have any records about any abatement work performed. The White House has not released any documentation, and the demolition company, ACECO, does not have an abatement license. You take a look at the letter that was sent by the ADAO to the White House, and they say, the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization, an independent nonprofit, formally demands the immediate public release of all environmental and occupational safety documentation associated with the demolition of the East Wing of the White House, including but not limited to records of pre-demolition asbestos, lead, and other inspections and testing of the East Wing and other parts of the White House complex and all related reports, memos, and correspondence. All abatement plans, notifications, and certifications for the demolition of the East Wing submitted to or required by regulation and procedures adopted or enforced by the District of Columbia, EPA, OSHA, the General Service Administrations, and offices responsible for building management within the executive office. Now you may say, hey, Ben, but wouldn't the unions flag this? Wouldn't the corporations not subject their workers to these types of conditions? Well, this was a non-union job. Trump refused to union workers. He did this deal with this ASECO company, ACECO. As soon as he did the deal with ACECO, they shut down their website and they're hiding all of their corporate information now from the public. And we don't know what they did. They should be proud to show their asbestos abatement plan. And also, we saw the plumes of the smoke ourselves with our own eyes. Also, this ADAO letter says we also would like to see all monitoring results, waste handling manifests, and contractor safety plans for the East Wing and related parts of the White House complex that relate to or reflect measures to protect against exposure to asbestos, lead, and these other things as part of the demolition of the East Wing. And it goes on to make additional requests. And it says how the East Wing was constructed in 2002 and then in 1942 when asbestos was widely used in the building construction materials. Federal law requires comprehensive asbestos inspection, notification, and abatement before any demolition. As of this date, no publicly available information demonstrates that the statutory obligations have been fulfilled. Failure to comply with applicable requirements could violate and all of these laws. But see, Trump doesn't give a crap that he's violating these laws. And these laws exist because we don't want people to die of this cancer. We don't want to have unsafe work environments. There's a reason why also these union contracts have the safety protocols in place. Then you have this letter from Senator Ed Markey. Here's what he has to say. He goes, Dear, and he writes a letter to ASECO, the demolition company. As the contractor handling the demolition of the East Wing of the White House, ASECO should have complied with the applicable health and safety requirements intended to protect its workers and the public from exposure to hazardous material, including from the release of asbestos-laden demolition debris and dust without proper containment. ASECO's refusal thus far to answer basic questions about permits and safety protocols raises serious concerns about whether your firm has has complied with the law or gambled with people's health. The demolition of a structure of the age and historic national significance of the East Wing demands the highest possible standards of care, not the lowest bid and a blind eye toward regulation. I write seeking an answer to the question whether ASECO cut health and safety corners on the White House East Wing demolition, and in doing so placed its own workers and the public at risk of exposure to asbestos and other hazardous materials. The East Wing construction in 2002 and 1942 expanded has served for decades as a workplace for the First Ladies and the White House staff. Its age and construction era make it overwhelmingly likely that asbestos-containing materials, lead-based paint, and other hazardous substances were present. Experts at the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization have warned of the real possibility that a building of this vintage has asbestos in insulation, flooring, and pipe wrap used for fire retardation and other purposes. Yet photographs and videos available online, as well as witness accounts, suggest the East Wing was torn apart at speed without containment systems, dust suppression, or even sufficient personal protective equipment for workers, raising the specter of uncontained contaminants spreading across the White House grounds. Damaged asbestos fibers are one of the most hazardous substances that can arise from construction demolition. Unless their presence is disclosed, individuals have no way of knowing that the air may contain tiny, tasteless, odorless fibers that cause no noticeable irritation but can be deadly. Construction workers on the East Wing site, nearby office workers and tourists and passerby can now be at heightened risk of developing lung cancer, asbestosis, mesothelioma from the inhalation and demolition of asbestos dust. ASECO's work falls squarely within the network of the federal regulations governing the demolition. Then it goes on to ask, to help me better understand ASECO's role in the East Wing demolition and whether it complied with safety regulations, please provide an answer. When and under what authority did ASECO begin demolition work on the East Wing? What was the scope of the work? Please provide any contracts or other agreements covering the work. Was a full hazardous materials survey, including asbestos and lead, conducted prior to demolition? If so, provide the surveyor's name, date of inspection, sampling, testing reports, and findings. If not, why not? If asbestos was found at the East Wing site, was an abatement or containment plan implemented, including worker protection and emission controls? If so, please provide the plan and any chain of custody records. If not, why not? And by the way, when you just saw what was taking place, we know there was no abatement plan because we could see there were no abatement steps. They just took a freaking crane and a bulldozer and tore the thing down. Did ASECO file the required NESHAP notifications with EPA Region 3? If so, please provide the documents. And then it talks more about permitting and things like that. You know, and I think this is all very, very important because we're talking about people's lives here. And I'm sick and tired of, this shouldn't be a political issue at all. It should just be a common sense issue. You follow the law, you address and disclose whether or not there is asbestos, you take the steps needed, abatement if there is, and you don't kill people. But Donald Trump just goes around killing people, in my opinion, you know, by his reckless and abhorrent behavior. Here was Senator Markey. You can see him right here. He spoke with some union leaders at LIUNA who showed up at an unrelated hearing, but he went through with the union workers the issues about asbestos abatement, and if this were to have been a union project, which Trump refused to hire unions for a White House project. I mean, how offensive is that? When he goes, I'm the union, you know, and then you have Sean O'Brien at the Teamsters, like, I love this guy. I love this guy. I mean, Sean O'Brien's one of the most pathetic people imaginable, that head of the Teamsters. I don't want to even go there. Anyway, here's what Senator Markey has to say. Here, play this clip.
LIUNA runs a world-class apprenticeship program that includes training on asbestos abatement. Many old buildings were constructed and renovated when asbestos-laden products were industry standard, including the White House. Are you aware of any permits or other indications that the White House, that President Trump, took any of the appropriate safety steps when Trump demolished the East Wing of the White House to protect against asbestos exposure?
I'm not aware of anything that they would have done to protect.
So the White House could have exposed workers and passersby to deadly asbestos. Is that your view?
They could have, and I can tell you, had it been a union workforce, we would have access to that. This administration chose to use a non-union workforce to go do that on a union project. One of the first things we teach in our apprenticeship is to have your brother or your sister's back. And if you see something, you say something. If something's unsafe, you can stop that work. This isn't a union job site, so we have no access to it. So I don't know what's going on out there.
No, thank you. And those safety standards, they exist for a reason. It's to protect workers. It's to protect innocent people who may be nearby, even working in the White House, from exposure to asbestos. And those standards just don't disappear on the whim of President Trump. They're there because of all the lessons we learned, especially because of asbestos workers who died at unbelievably high levels before we actually put protections in place. And that's why I wrote to the contractor who tore down the East Wing to demand answers on whether and why workers were put at risk for Trump's big donor ballroom. It's just another example of how Trump is the most anti-union president, anti-safety president in history. And that is something that absolutely we have to get to the bottom of. I've received no answers yet in terms of any asbestos protections, any other safety protections that were put in order to ensure that workers were not unnecessarily exposed to health endangering situations. So I thank both of you for your work on these issues. Thank you, Mr. President.
For the record, every merit shop that I visited emphasizes and takes great pride upon their safety record. And they are subject to the same OSHA regulations as regarding maintaining safety and exposure to asbestos or anything else. So just for the record.
No, I agree with you. The question is, does the president think he can waive all regulations because it's the White House and not any other property in the United States? And if that was the case, then these workers were exposed.
So there you have it. You know, let me know what you think there. I mean, I think when you present it that way, and also you go over Donald Trump's history with asbestos and him not believing that asbestos is a real thing. I mean, come on. He's saying that the World Trade Center wouldn't have been burned down if there wasn't asbestos, and it's all a major conspiracy of the mob. Come on, people. Come on. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.